historic album,
Band on the Run.
for Paul McCartney's birthday.
My big aim after the Beatles, once we decided to put a band together, was to do something different but successful. And that was difficult because all those years I'd been training Beatles style. And I didn't want to just continue the same thing. So I had to kind of avoid anything that sounded too Beatley and kind of make a new style, really, which was to become the Wing style. So by the time we did Band on the Run, I felt we'd got it. We'd really established something that wasn't like the Beatles at all. It had echoes, maybe, inevitably, because it was me, but that had established its own style. So, and I felt that we'd achieved it. And it was funny, years and years later, I was doing an interview with some guy. I think he was from Rolling Stone. And I said, well, Sgt. Pepper, Lonely Hearts Club Band, And he looked at me and said, well, he said, yeah, I know what you mean about Sgt. Pepper. He said, but my Sgt. Pepper's was Band on the Run. And for his generation, it was as important. So that really made me feel good, because that's what I've been trying to do. Establish something that was as important as the Beatles were.
The story behind Band on the Run.
Paul McCartney on recording in Nigeria.
It was a little bit of a fashion in those days to kind of record somewhere else. And we were to record on a boat for London town, So it was the era when people were wandering off and sort of recording in south of France. The Stones had done an Exile there, So there was that kind of recording on location vibe. I knew EMI, our record company, had a lot of studios. So I said to the guys, could you give me a list of where you've got studios? And I looked down, this list was very exciting. It was like Rio de Janeiro. So Rio was a possibility. China was a possibility. These were the three. And then I saw they had one in Lagos. So I thought, Lagos, man, Africa. I loved African music and beats. And I thought, okay, if I go to Rio, we're going to pick up maybe a Latin feel, because you can't be there and not pick something up. But I thought, but if we go to Lagos, we'll pick up a sort of rhythmic African feel, maybe. I think I overplayed the idea, because when we actually got there, I pretty much made the record I wanted to make. And there are a couple of tracks on it that have a little African influence, but maybe not as much as I thought. We just went and made a Wings record. I thought, wow, Africa, Lagos, adventure, let's do it. And it was great, so we went off, and I say, the big, terrible thing was right the night before we were due to fly the next morning, a couple of the guys rang me up and just said, we're not coming, drummer Denny and Henry, the guitar player, so we're not coming, I never quite worked out why, whether they just thought Africa's a bit far, a bit crazy. But me, Linda and Denny went down there. And it was funny because when we got back, there was a letter from the guy from EMI who said, Dear Paul, under no circumstances go to Lagos. There's been an outbreak of cholera. Luckily, we didn't. We just, dodged our way through it all. And we only got that letter when we got back, or else I don't think we would have gone there. But it was wild times, but that was why I went to Lagos. It just sounded exotic.
The Beatles Channel.
A look back at Band on the Run with Paul McCartney.
It's funny out there, Africa, it's obviously not as up to date as London or New York or anywhere in our world, really. They make great music, but they're not as technologically, or they weren't then, as technologically savvy as we were. We expected it to be a proper EMI studio. I think EMI, they built one of it. But in fact, we said, okay, where are the vocal booths? I kind of want to go do the vocal. And the guys looked at me blank. Vocal booth? We said, yeah. Those little wooden boxes with the glass in and that, where you put a mic in, you go, oh no. They didn't have vocal booths. So we had to say, okay, well, here's what it is. You take bits of wood and you make a big box, and we drew it out and gave them the dimensions. So then you put windows in, you need to seal it up, stick a little roof on it, a little door, and that's a vocal booth. So they just spent a little bit of time building them. We'd come in the morning, tink, 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 hello, tink, 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 putting the plexiglass in. But we got it done, and I think in a way, the kind of vibe of it being a little bit homemade, certainly the studio was homemade, that kind of found its way into our attitude. It was a little like, okay, look, if we haven't got a vocal booth, we'll just do it this way. And we adjusted our recording techniques till we did have a vocal booth, and we said, now we can do the vocal.
Paul McCartney and the story behind Band on the Run.
We got down the road and, of course, suddenly realized, whoa, street lighting isn't quite what it is in Europe. There's a couple of lampposts, but few and far between. Anyway, we're walking down the road, and I've got like cameras and tape recorders, all my cassettes in a bag. Linda's got a photographic gear as well. And a car comes up. Guy winds down the window. And I automatically think he's offering us a lift. So I just go, no, listen, man, it's great. Very nice of you to do that, but don't want a lift. We're walking. Great, thank you. Off you go. And they sort of went off. It was I think it was 5 or 6 local guys. So they went on. They looked a bit puzzled, and they went off. And they went down the street. I'm waving after them. Thanks. Wasn't that nice? Nice offer of a lift. Then suddenly the car stopped. Now this time all 6 of them got out, and we were now level with it. They got out, and one of my little guys got a knife. Holy cow! Wait a minute. They're not offering us a lift. The penny dropped and all fell into place. And the guy's holding a knife at me. And Linda's going, what do you want? What do you want? They're going, camera, tape recorder, dude, camera. So they just want all our stuff. So we're on money. So we're unloading our pockets, giving them. Linda's saying, leave him alone. He's a musician. It's like, that'll do the trick. Yeah, he's a musician. I wouldn't mess with him if I were you. So that was it. That was probably the most important. I mean, obviously, Linda had a nice camera. I had nice stuff. But the most important thing was they took the cassettes that were all the demos. So in a way, again, we had to work with all these difficulties. So that meant that I then had to remember the album. And that was okay, because that was kind of a rule John and I had always had, because we didn't have cassettes or any recording devices then. And we always had to remember stuff. So I thought, well, that was a good rule. And we used to say, if you can't remember it, how can the people remember it? So there we were, coming into the studio. How's that one go again? Oh, yeah, I know, Band on the Run. The thing about Linda is she really kind of knew virtually nothing when we started. And it was more of a kind of almost like a college band that we just said, do you want to go on the road? Yeah, let's do it. And we didn't really think too much about it. We just thought, hey, it's a little bunch of friends going and making some music, which, when we started the Beatles, that's kind of all it was. It was just, hey, we made it up as we went along, and we got better together. In Linda's case, she hadn't really played much keyboard, so the early things were very simple. But as we went on, she learned a lot and eventually became a really good player. So by the time we were at Band on the Run, she was singing great and very distinctively too. So she gained more confidence as she went on.
Sharing the story behind his classic album, Band on the Run.
Paul McCartney.
Around about that time, there was a lot of kind of songs like Desperados and Renegades, and I think a lot of people were kind of on the run around about those early 70s, A lot of people who'd opted out of society in many ways. So it was in the air. So the idea of a band on the run, I thought, yeah, that's cool. It's nice. It could be a band of brothers. So like the Prison Escape, they're not a musical band. They're just a band of convicts. But yeah, so out of that, I thought, yeah, band, musical band of brothers, put it together, made Band on the Run. When we first started off, everything was 3 chords, Buddy Holly, Elvis, very simple songs. So the Beatles used to record them. As time went by, we got a little bit more complex in the songs themselves. And some of them started to get layers and get episodes. You get a bit of this, and then it would go somewhere else completely. We kind of started that trick. We used to end our singles by going somewhere else. So you get, she's got a ticket to ride, and I don't care. My baby don't care. like another bit of song out of nowhere while we just do the fade out. And I think that led then to this kind of concept album thing. I think also we were enjoying the format of a long player. You know, you can either think of a long playing record, as it was then, LP, as it was normally 14 songs, 7 aside, which again was a kind of nice formula because you had 7 songs, then you had an enforced rest while you turned the record over. So you sometimes would wait for a moment, then, now the second side, like part 1 and part 2. So that led you to start thinking in those terms. And as you got more imaginative, you thought, well, the end, this is like a finale to this 40-minute piece. Oh, we should make something of this, you know. So yeah, on Sgt. Pepper, we started to think of it more as a whole. And I followed that idea through. I kind of liked it, and I didn't think I'd explored it entirely. So I did a bit of that with Band on the Run that gave it that wholeness and led it to being called a concept album.
Band on the Run. A look back.
With Paul McCartney.
It was the one where we kind of finally felt we got it together. And the strangest circumstances of making it shouldn't have allowed that to happen, because it was pretty weird, you know. 2 of the band members left the night before we went, and we were in Lagos. We were building the studio. It was quite a crazy project, really. But yeah, we just finally felt like we'd made a good Wings album. And some of the others were nice, but this one, we felt like we'd cracked it.
That's the entire Band on the Run album.
But if you bought it in America, there was one more song on the LP, right in the middle of side 2.
A bonus track. This is Helen Wheels. Hear Paul McCartney, a look back at Band on the Run.
Saturday, midnight Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific, on the Beatles channel.